Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special session of the Ann Arbor City Council. May I have, please, the reading of order and notice of call a special session?
Notice is hereby given that a special session of the City of Ann Arbor City Council will be held on Monday, March 16th, 2020 at 6 o'clock p.m. in the City Council Chambers, second floor, the Guy C. Larkham Jr. City Hall Building, 301 East Huron Street for the following purposes. A closed session under MCL 15.268H, the Michigan Open Meetings Act for personnel evaluation of the city attorney. An open session for resolution to amend the employment agreement with city attorney and place written evaluation in personnel file.
Thank you. If you're able, please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's a time to believe. Welcome, Brother Christopher.
I mean, you know, I just got all grade school on myself. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Hayner?
Here.
Councilmember Bannister? Absent. Councilmember Griswold? Absent. Councilmember Lum?
Here.
Councilmember Grand?
Here.
Councilmember Ackerman?
Here.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Eaton? Absent. Councilmember Nelson? Absent. Councilmember Smith? Absent. Councilmember Umlawi?
Here.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Ackerman, seconded by Councilmember Malawi. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The agenda is approved. We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time clock. As a matter of courtesy, we may have only one person speaking at a time. And finally, if you require assistance in speaking before council today, we'd be delighted to provide it to you. Is there anyone who would like to speak at public comment? Seeing no one, public comment is closed. May I have a motion, please, to go into closed session on the basis of?
The Open Meeting Act, personnel evaluation, and with the consent of the city attorney.
Moved by Councilmember Umlawi, seconded by Councilmember Ackerman. Discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember
Ackerman.
Ackerman.
Councilmember Ackerman?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton? Absent. Councilmember Nelson? Absent. Councilmember Smith? Absent. Councilmember Umlawi?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner?
Yes.
Councilmember Bannister? Absent. Councilmember Griswold? Absent. Councilmember Lum?
Yes.
Councilmember Grand?
Yes.
Motion carries.
We're in closed session. We have a motion, please, to go back into open session, moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Councilmember Hayner. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are back in open session. DC 1, resolution to finalize evaluation report and amend the employment agreement for City Attorney Stephen K. Postma. Moved by Councilmember Graham, seconded by Councilmember Lum. Discussion of DC 1. Councilmember Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Council Administration Committee is presenting this for Council's consideration. This resolution amends the employment agreement, excuse me, with City Attorney Postma to provide for a 2% salary increase effective January 1st, a 2% lump sum payment, and permits Mr. Postma to cash out 100 hours of vacation time he's banked. The resolution also places Mr. Postma's final written performance evaluation in his personnel file. The second to last whereas clause states that Mr. Postma has provided excellent leadership over the past year in many areas. That's true, and we appreciate Stephen's contributions. It has been quite a busy year for him and the Attorney's Office. The Council Administration Committee recommends your approval, and I would also like to thank our independent HR consultant, Ms. Amy Sell, for providing outstanding guidance throughout this evaluation process and assistance with regard to how we conducted the evaluations and are now reporting out. Her expertise has really been invaluable, and I think sets a great path forward for council as we approach these evaluations going forward. So thank you very much.
Further discussion? Councilmember Romali.
I would like to echo, well, I didn't really hold. Well, I just want to say I appreciate Mr. Postma's service to the city of Ann Arbor. He is a poster candidate for what it means to be a public servant. We are lucky to have someone who is as qualified and competent and who cares about the community. So, and he's a Ward 5 resident, so I get to represent him. So, I'll be supporting this tonight.
Further discussion? I guess that I'd like to add my thanks and admiration for the great work that Mr. Postma does, and I'd like to add that in addition to his own individual attributes, part of the great work that he does is stewarding an outstanding city attorney's office. We are so fortunate to be served by a group of folks who are committed to the city, committed to its residents, and committed to providing the council and the municipal organization the best service that's possible. They do it with expertise, they do it with cheer, and they do it with a dogged resolve. We're, I think our office is the envy of the state, and I don't mind saying so. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved.
Mayor, may I make a statement?
If you'd be so kind.
I'm not going to sit down there. I'm going to stand up at the podium and address you here tonight, and it's a pleasure to do that. I would like to thank the Administration Committee who conducted the annual review. This is usually coordinated by Councilmember Lum, and that's been the case this year also, as she mentioned, with assistance from outside consultant Amy Sell. My role under the charter has been to provide advice and counsel to the city, including the council, city administrator, and the service area administrators. 2019 was, as Councilmember Lum mentioned, a busy year, as I outlined in the budget preview last month. Expansion of requests for legal advice from all of the service areas as well as other pressing issues. I want to here and now thank the Office of the City Attorney, the attorneys and staff in my office for their work under very difficult circumstances at times. The attorneys and the staff are my constant support, and I greatly appreciate their efforts, and I recognize them here publicly. Their dedication, in fact, inspires me every day. Through my view of providing support, I also want to say that it is an honor to provide support to the entire structure of the city. The importance of those who work for the city cannot be underestimated or taken for granted. As we have been recently engaged in emergency planning, this point has been driven home. The need to focus on city services and the dedicated city employees who continue to provide these critical services will be underscored at the meetings tonight and in the near future and perhaps this whole year. I also want to make clear to the council, the city staff, and the public my plans. I am now the longest-serving city attorney since the position came in-house with the 1956 charter. This is somewhat sobering. I grew up in Ann Arbor, and it has been a pleasure to represent the city. In 2016, I promised the city council that I would stay until July 2020 so that I could finish at least the first phase of important succession planning that the city council fully supported and that I am grateful for. That date is fast approaching, and some of the public mistakenly believe that that would be a date of my retirement. It is not. I also promised the council, most people don't know that, that I would give the council at least 1 year notice of my retirement. And I'll underscore, I have not given that notice, and I'm not hereby giving that notice. I have another phase of succession planning to finish by January 1st, 2021. Furthermore, given the increase of legal needs of the city in these crucial times and the need for stability in the city, make me even more determined to continue to take care of the city as the city attorney. This year, there have been many novel legal issues to navigate, an increase in the need for legal services, and voids left by high-level departures. Sure, this was not easy. I provide advice to the council as a whole, and some advice given is not always, may not be what some want to hear. But again, I am unwavering in my commitment to provide the best legal advice, unvarnished, as anyone who knows me would expect. It is also what is professionally required. I appreciate the faith that you have put in me. Since last fall, I also appreciate the numerous calls received from residents and staff requesting that I continue to serve the city. As many of you know, I grew up in Ann Arbor, and I'm proud of our city. In the 1970s, I was on the track and cross-country teams in high school at Pioneer. We trained an absurd amount under every condition. We competed at a high level, and that means I was trained to go the distance, and I learned to ignore all distractions from the task at hand. These are lessons that have served me well. The work of the city is not easy. The work of you, council, as elected representatives, is hard work. Thank you for being here. But that is true for any work that is important. I appreciate the time you spent on the review. It was a lot of time, and the support of the council. I look forward to working with you in this coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Councilmember Hayner. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Good evening. By the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
I think you have one under your binder. Councilmember Hayner,
Here.
Councilmember Bannister, absent. Councilmember Griswold, absent. Councilmember Lum,
Here.
Councilmember Grand. Here. Councilmember Ackerman,
Here.
Mayor Taylor,
Here.
Councilmember Eaton, absent. Councilmember Nelson, absent. Councilmember Smith, absent. Councilmember Ramlawi,
Here.
we have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of the agenda. Would the administrator like us to remove all the 8 vote items from the agenda by fiat? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is that acceptable to the body?
Yes.
So I'll consider that a friendly amendment, and we'll pick it up along the way. Further discussion of the agenda. Thank you. They are deemed to be postponed and moved to the next meeting rather than removed from the agenda. Is that acceptable? Let's get that. Well, no, it's not a postponement because they're off the agenda. So we'll just bring them on back. Staff will bring them on back on their own accord.
Okay.
Further discussion, the agenda is amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda as amended is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator?
Yes, sir. So with the COVID outbreak, staff has had to do a lot of reprioritization. It's been a very busy week or two. Today, we announced to staff that we're going to close City Hall for all but essential services. So that means that your fire, police, solid waste, water services. Those things will continue. We're encouraging our residents to utilize our online options for services, and to the extent that we can support those with the employees who are telecommuting, we will do so. However, our focus will be on essential services. This term is expected to go till April 5th at this time. However, one of the things that cannot be delayed, or I guess in addition to that, as I've gotten up to speed on, or I'm getting up to speed on some items, there are a number of council directives that have been given to the administrator over the last few months, and with this closure, I am planning to move all of those back 60 days, all the deadlines back 60 days. If that is a problem for any council member, please contact me afterwards individually, and I can look at those, but at this time, I anticipate needing to move all those deadlines back kind of en masse. One of the things that cannot be delayed is the preparation of the city budget. That is a charter requirement, and I'm going to be focusing on that soon. I did want to touch base with council to give you a perspective of how I plan to approach that. This is a very unclear time, very volatile time, so it's not clear whether the events we're going to are going to have a short-term, a year, or a long-term impact. That volatility makes developing a budget challenging. So my plan in this development is not to make, when I look at the impacts that you have been presented and we'll see, my plan is to not really veer a whole lot from standard course. I would probably do some tweaking here and there. This would establish a budget baseline for us to continue operations as we were kind of headed on anyway. That does not forestall the fact that if we observe an economic situation that is more rooted, then we may have a mid-year adjustment. Just because you approve this plan, or whatever comes out of this plan as amended, as a direction, that does not mean we will necessarily do everything in it based on the environment that we actually operate in during the year. Again, if that is of concern to council members, please let me know after the meeting. I also would like to point out that there are, in an effort to help the small businesses in town, particularly the downtown, the DDA has opened their parking decks and lots. They will be free from now through, I believe it was April 5th. That allows, hopefully, people to feel more free to come downtown and support their local businesses. The DDA is also going to be bagging the meters in front of the bars and restaurants downtown so that pickup and drop-off can be expedited and efficient for visitors. The city does anticipate continuing parking enforcement for the on-street meters to ensure that the retail businesses have the appropriate turnover and management of traffic that supports an efficient operation of downtown. Lastly, I just want to thank Officer Keller for being here tonight. Thank you.
We now have, if we may, the Center of the City Task Force final report. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here tonight.
Welcome. I'm Heather Seiferth. I served as the staff liaison to the task force for the past 6 months, and we actually have several task force members here tonight. So we have the chair, Megan Mussolf, and the vice chair, Miles Clapthor, who are going to present an overview of the process and the outcome of the report. And then we also have Alan Haber here, too. So at the end, you can ask any one of us questions. All right, thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, good evening. Hi, everyone. I am Megan Mussolf. I am chair of the Center City Task Force. And Miles, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Miles Clapthor. I am the vice chair of the task force.
And thank you for the opportunity to come and give you a little bit of an overview of our report and what we sort of come to as a group. So let me make sure I can do that. Yay, okay. So as a reminder, this is the task force. There was a group of people, 9 of us, community members, and then 2 liaisons from City Council. One is Council Member Hayner, and other representative was Council Member Smith. And we represented a lot of different, I think, experiences and expertise. We had some urban planning. We had some architects. We had some students. I'm a librarian, right? So we had a lot of people come together to sort of work on this work together. And, you know, there are just 3 of us here today, but I just really want to really drive home that the work that we're presenting today was a group effort. We never would have gotten this far without this amazing group of people to sort of steward this work and work together. Like looking at Miles to make sure I'm like saying everything. As a reminder, this is the task that was given to the task force. So we were asked to 1, engage citizens in visioning, long-term planning, and immediate and intermittent uses, building toward the final vision for the center of the city on the library block. And 2nd, to develop recommendations to help determine the next steps to advance the development of a central park and civic center commons known as the Center of the City Commons. And this is just a little bit of an overview of the process that we went through. So step 1 was to really think about all the information and all the work that had gone into thinking about what to do with those spaces, what to do with that land. We had 1 round of soliciting ideas from the community, and we'll talk about a little bit more about this as we go on today. Then we sort of came back together as a task force to sort of review what we heard and develop some preliminary recommendations, think about what opportunities we had to go back to the community to ask for information. We again brought that back together and then used that information, used what we heard from the community to develop a final set of recommendations. I'm kind of talking fast because I know we have a short amount of time. All right, I'm going to give it to Miles to talk about notification. Probably want to use the mic.
Well, since you all have the PowerPoint, I won't go through reading word for word from it, but I will say that thanks especially to Heather, we were able to use really all of the city's abilities for contact. We used digital contact, email, social media. We physically mailed about, I believe, 6,500 copies of a flyer that you'll see later on. And then a big part of our contact was actually person to person and hearing people's ideas and soliciting their feedback. We had a number of input opportunities as well. At both of our open houses, at our task force meetings, and through our use of our idea pod on both Library Lot and on Liberty Plaza. And throughout our process, we were both pleasantly surprised and very happy to see the engagement and the concern and the enthusiasm that our community has for this project.
We're sort of like winging this, if you couldn't tell. All right, so just to go in a little bit more detail about some of the things we did. So one of the amazing things we did was that we hosted what we called the Idea Pod, and we did 2 versions of this. It's a structure that we set up, and one version, it was on the Library Lot parking lot itself, and then the second one was in Liberty Plaza, and it was this amazing opportunity in real time to sort of get people to have a conversation, engage in the issues that were surrounding, like what do we as a community do with this space. And just a shout out to Alan, who is here, and then also our colleague John, who spent a lot of time talking to community members during these 2 engagements, and I think we actually have 2 pictures here. So you can see like it was an amazing opportunity to like really engage at sort of a deeper level with people from the community about what we might do with this space. The other thing we did to gather community input is that we held 2 open houses. So the first one was in November, and we had about 150 people would come from the community and engage with us around a number of issues about, who's the audience for this space, ideally what kind of activities happen there, other sort of questions that we posed to the groups, and we tried to have a very interactive open house style to try to get as many perspectives and many viewpoints as we possibly can to sort of help inform our recommendations. And there's another picture from that open house. The other thing we did is that we worked together as a group to design a targeted mailing. One of the things that was really important to the group as we did our work, and you will see that it's one of our recommendations for the work moving forward, is that we wanted to try to make sure that we invited the entire community into this process, making sure that we heard diverse perspectives, made sure that we heard from not the typical voices that sort of come to, city open houses. Like, how do we engage with the entire community? So we worked together to send out this targeted mailing. I believe we sent it to 6,500 people. I'm looking at Heather for.
We printed another 1,000 beyond that.
And we printed another 1,000 just to sort of hand out. So this was another way that we tried to pull people into the conversation. And then we held a second open house in January, and this one had about 75 people. And I think originally, as we were planning towards this open house, we thought we would list some preliminary recommendations and get feedback from the community. But actually what happened is that we found out there was just some open-ended questions, some conversations, some points of tension really in the community about what we do with this space. So we used the second open house to really try to dive deeper into this, like, okay, we're hearing this need for housing. Can this space move towards that? What other sorts of things can we really talk about as a community to try to move this conversation forward? Feel free to jump in at any moment. And then this is just another picture from that open house. Oh, and then another picture from that open house. All right. I'm just going to keep on talking. Let me know if you want to jump in. Okay. All right. So one of the things that was asked of us as a task force was to create a vision for the space. And just as a reminder, this is the space that is bounded by 5th and William and Division and Liberty. And this is our vision for that space. Our vision is to create a space that is inclusive and welcome to everyone, that is safe, active, and fosters a culture of peace and nonviolence, is easy to see, easy to get to, and easy to get through, is flexible, adaptable, and sustainable, and is inspiring and promotes lifelong learning. And so definitely this vision has been informed not only by the work of the task force, but everything we've heard from the community. And I think one of the things we definitely want to drive home is that, we didn't solve all the problems, and in some ways we just started this work. And so it's really important as this work moves forward that we continue to engage with the community to get further input, to sort of bring them into the conversation.
So I think
Yeah, go ahead.
one other thing you'll notice is that in our report, we don't have any designs or anything of that nature, any very specific and concrete steps as to what should happen in the future. Instead, this is more of, as was already said, it's a step forward in a process that's going to be longer, but it's also going to be very much community-focused and community-driven. So even though we are not coming here with the answers, we're still very proud to say that we took a step that we think is going to put us in the right direction for a somewhat novel idea on how to design public spaces.
Awesome. Okay, so that's our vision, and then the other ask of us was to do recommendations, and we have made 6 recommendations about the future of these spaces. So I'm going to read them. Number 1 is facilitate the formation of the Ann Arbor Council of the Commons. This group will be formed to sort of think about programming and other activities for the space. Number 2 is schedule regular meetings of a Center of the City Block Partners Group. As we did our work, we found it is very, very crucial to the success of the space that we pull in all partners that surround the space, including business owners, including residents, including the library, and other important partners. Number 3 is remove ground level parking on the library lot parking structure and begin efforts to redesign as an active public space. It was very evident from our community engagements that having some sort of active space for discourse was really important to the community. Number 4 is authorize initial planning for the long-term development of the center of the city block as a priority under the city's master plan. Number 5 is authorize initial planning for the development of the public spaces on the center of the city block. So a reminder, those public spaces are the top of the parking structure, but also Liberty Plaza. So giving both of those spaces some attention and love and care. And then number 6 is negotiate potential agreements or easements that allow the future expansion and connections of the public spaces on the center of the city block. And so this is just an example of what comes out of our report. So for each recommendation, so this is the first one, facilitate the formation of the Ann Arbor Council of the Commons. Included in our report is who we think is the responsible party for moving that recommendation forward, and then a list of goals and action items to sort of help move forward that recommendation. Due to time, I'm not going to go through all of these, but just to give you an idea of what's included in the report. We wanted to spend a little bit of time, and we've talked about this a lot, but I want to drive it home, that, what informed these recommendations really was the community input that we've received. And so, like Miles said, we had a number of different ways to gather that input. And in some ways, like we had over 500 people respond to our survey, right? So we had a lot of information from the community, which I think really shows an investment in this space. There's a real desire to sort of form the future of what happens. We were also really informed by the past work that has gone into thinking about this space. So this space has been a point of conversation in our community for a very long time now. And so we really wanted to honor that past work, honor those conversations, honor the work that got us to this point in time, and to build off of that, not start from scratch. And then the other thing that really, I think, informed us is that, one of the things that is included in the resolution in our charge was to think about commons and commoning. And I think I speak personally for myself that through this engagement, through the people who have come and shared their time with us, shared their expertise and their experience, we've really learned about what is a commons, what does commoning mean, and how we might do something like this in our community. Oh, last thing. So the last thing we did, we sort of informed our recommendations, was also thinking about, how do we create sustainable and amazing public spaces? And so there's a lot of research out there. And so using that research, using that work to help inform what we recommended to you today. The other thing that we wanted just to end with is that, we were charged with a specific task and we had a certain scope, but we wanted to make sure that we talked about things that came up during our conversations. And definitely something that came up was affordable housing, the need for more affordable housing in our downtown space, not necessarily in scope for what our work is, but we want to make sure that we let that voice be heard. It's really important. It's a strong voice in our community. So we just want to recognize that. And then another additional consideration is that, we tried really hard, I think, to try and reach a diverse audience or diverse perspective in our work, but I'm not sure if we actually hit the mark. So as this work moves forward, how do we bring in more members of this community, more diverse perspectives into the conversation about the future of the space? And with that, we're going to wrap up with thank yous. So I'm personally going to thank the task force members. We were charged with a very difficult task, and we did it in about 8 months and 15 meetings. So I can't say enough about how that group came together, and I'm so proud of our work together. I want to thank Heather. We would not have been here without Heather's expertise and guidance and counseling, sort of steer us in the right directions as we plan these community engagements, as we wrote our recommendations. I want to thank council members Smith and Hayner for your guidance and for helping us move this work forward. And then really thank the community members for engaging in this, for participating. Sometimes it got a little heated, but I think that shows the care and the love that the support has, or the community has for that space. All right, that's all we have. We can answer some questions. We did that really fast because we didn't have a lot of time. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was outstanding.
Yeah.
And, this year often isn't an opportunity for a lot of questions. That tends to be more in work sessions, but the work product of the task force is excellent. So thank you for the work that you did in bringing it forward. It's a lot to mull over. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now come to public comment. We come to public comment general time. Reserve time. Public comment reserve time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserve time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time clock. As a matter of courtesy, we may have only one person speaking at a time. And finally, if you require assistance in speaking before council today, we'd be delighted to provide it to you. Our first speaker today is Mojan Savabiasfani.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I am here to speak about the so-called Polluter Pay Act, which you're going to vote on today. But before that, I want to tell you that this virus that is coming is extremely, extremely fast. Before you know it, the capacity of the hospitals will be overrun by the number of people who will catch this. And we all know that the United States is quite ill-prepared for this virus. Many other countries have got lessons from it. We should take those lessons. We need field hospitals set up right now. Don't think that it is a remote thing and we have a hospital and this and that. We have a couple of hospitals. It will overwhelm them very, very, very quickly. So let us think about that and act on it. The other thing I wanted to say is this. For the many, many times that I've been here, we need to clean up the Gelman pollution. We know from experience that for 30 years, we have not been able to make the polluter pay. It's a great slogan, but obviously under circumstances that we have now, where the EPA is the least effective, least capable, and least driven to protect us than it's ever been, under these circumstances, when the Superfund list is being dismantled, it is silly to think that the polluter will pay to clean up the dioxin contamination. I hope eventually they will, but right now we cannot wait. We cannot wait for another 30 years. We cannot kick the can for another 30 years. We've got to clean it up right now. We've got to show the respect to the environment, the respect that we pretend we have for it. We have to show it, and we have to show it by immediately cleaning it up. You cannot continue to pretend anymore. If we care for this earth, if we care to clean our environment and live in a sustainable, healthy environment, we should put the money where it deserves to be. We should clean it up. We can do it. I'm speaking to people all over Ann Arbor. Everybody wants to clean it up. Why can't you put a question to the public and see what they say? Why can't you put a millage to the public and ask them, will you want us to clean it up or not? And let's see what they say and listen to them. This is an enormous embarrassment for all of us, all of the people who have lived in Ann Arbor for 35 years, and we have not been able to contain it, clean it, or get rid of it. We've been spending thousands and millions of dollars on lawyers, litigations, and still it's spreading.
Thank you. Our next speaker is
Clean
Blaine
it up now.
Coleman.
Yeah, well, as Mojgan mentioned, we need, for the city, to get ready to build a field hospital, or more than one field hospital, because this coronavirus will overrun the existing hospital facilities. Italy is doing it, and Ireland's doing it. Now, about the Gelman resolution that you have in front of you tonight, it's a very nice resolution. If I were sitting on the city council, I would vote for it. Very nice. But it does not put shovels in the ground. It does not clean up the dioxane contamination of the city, and it's not intended to clean up the dioxane contamination of the city. Your previous efforts to have the EPA do a feasibility study that might last 30 years also was not going to put shovels in the ground to clean up the dioxane plume. The only thing that's going to clean up that dioxane contamination is if the city coughs up the money, gets out the shovel, and cleans that dioxane plume up itself. And if you're not about action now, cleaning it up now, then you're only about kicking the can down the road, as Mojgan said, for another 30 years. And I know something about appearing in front of the city council and asking them to listen for years and years and finding that they do not meaningfully listen. I've been demanding that the city take action against Israel, divestment against Israel, boycott against Israel, sanctions against Israel, at least cut off the military aid to Israel, at least that much. These kinds of resolutions the city can pass, and they will have a political impact wider than this city. And it will make Israel stop and think before it massacres thousands more Palestinians. During this coronavirus right now, violent Israeli settlers are rampaging across the Jordan Valley right now, terrorizing Palestinian people out of their homes and their farms in the Jordan Valley right now. And this is while the Palestinian people are struggling with the coronavirus themselves. They're struggling with an inadequate hospital system. And in the Gaza Strip, as soon as the first person catches the coronavirus,
They're dead.
they are locked in an Israeli prison. The Gaza Strip is an Israeli prison. You can't get out of it. You can't escape. And Israel has devastated not just the economy, but the healthcare system in Gaza. As soon as the first person in the Gaza Strip gets the coronavirus, the whole of the Gaza Strip is going to be afflicted in horrible ways, and you need to cut off the military aid to Israel before things get worse.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michelle Hughes. Michelle Hughes. Our next speaker is James Fogel. James Fogel. Our next speaker is Kirk Westfall. Kirk Westfall. Our next speaker is Henry Herskowitz. Henry Herskowitz. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Amlawi.
I just have a quick question, and then I'm going to defer my comments till my colleagues speak. Will staff be here to answer any of the questions? Mr. Hupy or anybody around to answer any questions? Mr. Crawford?
Some staff is available in the building. It depends on the topic, whether we're able to cover it tonight. We had some people who could not stay. If you have a particular topic, I can check.
I appreciate it. Well, I guess we'll find out when it comes to those questions.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Crawford, for your comments on the COVID-19 crisis tonight, and thanks to staff for making sure when residents call 911, someone's there to keep them safe. When they turn on the tap, there's clean drinking water. When they flush the toilet, their house remains clean and safe. So that's really appreciated. These are pretty unprecedented times, and it's my hope that when we look back at this in 6 months, it'll all look like an overreaction, social distancing and self-isolation, and that's how we'll know that we were successful, is if we're able to keep death tolls low, if we're able to keep our hospital systems at capacity, we'll know that we have done everything we could collectively. But now more than ever, it's time to be a friend and a neighbor. So make sure you're calling your elderly neighbors regularly, FaceTime your parents or your grandparents, text a friend, donate to a local housing or food security nonprofit, and the more we're able to take that collective action, the better we'll get through this together. But as individuals, make sure you limit your contact with others to a bare minimum. Clean and disinfect commonly touched surfaces. Wash your hands frequently, scrubbing hands with soap for 20 seconds. Avoid touching your face. That's the hardest one, I found out. Call a healthcare professional if you exhibit a fever, cough, shortness of breath. And if you do order takeout from a downtown restaurant, make sure you tip well.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Ackerman, for those comments. I think that's perfectly appropriate to say those things from the bench up here. This is a definite a new situation for everybody here, and I know that city staff's been working hard behind the scenes, and a lot of people have been reaching out to us privately and on social media to ask what are the kinds of things that we can do as a city. And in some sense, our authority is limited. In some sense, it's quite broad. And I think we've been doing the important things that we can as a city. And I know that the state has some emergency orders out there that are the effort is to increase social distancing, limit large gatherings and things like that. And it's difficult. I know that it's difficult for the small businesses who normally would be the gathering place. And it's difficult for some folks in our community to understand that, you shouldn't be 600 people at a house party just because classes are canceled. But I would really urge folks out there in the community to heed the advice from the community public health departments, from the things that you find from the city and the things that you see from the CDC. It's not an overreaction to get ahead of this. It's not an overreaction to practice this social distancing. It's not a big deal. I saw it, I was talking to a woman and you know, we're a little too old for this, but, you know, they canceled school for a year when everybody had polio, right? And so you can get over it, and you can reach out to your neighbors, and hopefully the school system will step up like they have been, the libraries and everybody else, and we'll all work together and do the best we can. But a lot of the success counts on the individual's efforts in this case. And so we have to act individually, and we have to care as a community. And I hope that that message gets out there, and share it with everybody else. Be clean and wash your hands, please.
Councilor Grant.
Thank you. In addition to all the city staff who've been working so hard, I also, because I think that's been stated, and I certainly have tremendous appreciation for basic services. I think sanitation was one that wasn't mentioned either, but clearly would get very out of hand, especially with so many people, you know, sheltering in place. We're creating probably more garbage and recycling at home than we normally would be, and using more water, and So just tremendous appreciation for that. Also for our partners, I want to mention at the county and the state, there were things that as we were looking and hearing comments about maybe that we shouldn't be holding this meeting, I thought that we may have to come together as a council to approve. But fortunately, you know, either at the county level, at the school level, at the state level, they were getting ahead of us. Couple, on, you know, certain number of occasions, certainly today with bars and restaurants, you know, moving to takeout and delivery only. That was something that we might have had to act on this evening, but the governor was a step ahead of us. And I do have tremendous fear for other parts of the country where they're led by governors that don't believe in science, don't go out and, you know, fortunately our primary was done, but, you know, these elections do matter. I just really want to thank the city leadership, the mayor, for having a lot of conversations behind the scenes and being responsive to me. Same with the city attorney's office when I heard concerns about things like people being evicted and the importance of being able to keep people in their homes. When I brought up that issue, it was responded to very quickly by our courts and by city leadership. So I see we have representation from the DDA, just all of the actions that have been taken in our community. I really appreciate the fact that I get to live here. So please do, I know it seems ironic for us to be telling people to socially distance themselves from this place, and I hope that we'll be looking for ways that we can meet remotely as well now that the governor's issued that order.
Councilor Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and I too would like to thank Mr. Crawford and his entire team for going, you know, full board since the pandemic has struck our community with its with all the associated concerns that you've been attempting to address. And you quickly assembled an emergency management team, and the collaboration with the county health department, the U of M, all the hospitals, Red Cross, on and on, has been exceptional. And as you said in one of your, I think you sent us at least a dozen updates or so. I just sorted by your name and my email, and you know, working weekends, on and on. You credit the staff for their commitment and for being professional, proactive, creative, you know, plug in the accolade, and they have been all of that, as have you. And so your perspectives on operations and your recommendations, and as you did tonight, giving us a heads up on the budget challenges that will likely ensue as a result of all of this, are greatly appreciated. And it's enabled us to also share information with the broader community. And I know that's been appreciated by many, and people have been reaching out to us for suggestions on, among other things, how they can help. We have an incredible community, and As is noted, I would commend the city webpage to get these COVID-19 updates. City's webpage is outstanding, and you have links there to CDC and the State Department of Health and Human Services, and lots of good information for people, so thank you for that as well. And just in general, the Washtenaw County United Way has organized a Washtenaw County coronavirus volunteer response team, and as has been noted, they need medical and non-medical volunteers, and so thank you as well for providing that link for our community. So we will get through this, and I just appreciate the leadership that's been provided throughout, and I see Ms. Polly here, the DDA stepping up also to help we're all also very concerned, obviously, about the impact on the small business community. We have a lot of people in this community. It's going to be very difficult, and so finding ways to assist to lessen this economic impact, if there's any way to do that. All those recommendations, suggestions, and actions are greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Further communication from council? Oh, Councilmember Brumlawi.
Thank you, and appreciate all the words that were spoken about the current state of affairs. Appreciate staff's response in this galvanizing minute, in this galvanizing moment in our nation's history, in our world's history. The city administrator has been very agile, as well as his staff. As my colleagues have stated, we've been getting a lot of emails and calls and texts asking us and recommending action to be taken. In each of those cases, whether it was the water shutoffs or the evictions, by the time we spoke with our city administrator, action had already been taken on them. We've also we've seen action taken by the DDA today to help the situation downtown for the merchants and everyone else affected by it. I appreciate the city's wisdom and action taken. Calmer heads prevail in moments like this, and to this point, we have passed the test. But let's not be fooled. The hardest part is yet to come. I know as a small business owner in downtown, we've effectively been closed. We are there just having a semblance of an organization, be there for the community, to provide food for those who can't provide it for themselves. But we've adhered to the state orders, and thankfully we have a leadership in the state and the county that does the action that responsible governments do. People have asked us what the city's been doing. The city's been working like any other organization, trying to find new normals every day. Things keep moving, things keep changing. There is no, plan is about as good as about 24 hours. The plans keep changing. So I appreciate, again, putting in the time, the work it's taken. It's not a 9 to 5. It's been 24/7. Appreciate the calls and the emails and the updates. But again, it's just started. I believe, obviously I endorse, and I hope I get more than 3 minutes if I could, please, just a few more. I endorsed Bernie Sanders as a president, and his slogan towards the end then, it's not about me, it's about us. And I really want to convey that sentiment. We're in this together. We're in the same boat. So hopefully we realize that, and we first address those who are the most vulnerable, the most in need, and recognize the heroic efforts being put forth by the people on the front line, the medical professionals who are paying a dear price, some of them, and of course the elderly and those who have medical complications. So I urge our residents to take care of themselves, but also to be very cognizant of the folks that are the most vulnerable first. allow the resources to be addressed and directed to those who can use it and need it the most. I believe, March 11th will go down in infamy. That's when the world changed for me as a small business owner. I think at this time, I would ask the city administrator and my colleagues that we form a task force so we can deal with the cultural, social, and economic institutions that make up our city, so we can communicate with those organizations unilaterally with a clear voice and clear direction, and we can apply the resources that we have to the problems, because the problems are going to be many and the resources are going to be few. And I'm just concerned that we may run out of resources and wish we did things in different orders. So I think we need to treat it like a triage and find out what needs to be addressed. It is, of my opinion, that we have just entered a recession, and we need to treat this as if we are in a recession. Economic forecasts are 6% it's going to shrink by 6% in the next quarter. So these are real numbers, as well as with the health effects. There's significant economic fallout. So again, I will urge that we put a task force together to help address what comes next.
Councilor Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just realized that we pulled DC 6 from the agenda, and I was hoping the city administrator could talk through what we can do between now and April 6th to help the Housing Commission close any gaps to prevent any evictions possible.
I noticed the same thing. DC 6 is an item where the Office of Community and Economic Development informed us that they anticipate some challenges with evictions from our residents as incomes are reduced during this time. I plan to, because we do not have a quorum or an 8 vote, which was needed for that item, I will be trying to address that prior to our next meeting in any manner that I can. And I do not have those actions to discuss today, but I will be working with them within the powers that I have.
Okay. Please let us know how we can help.
Further communications from council? I would like to recommend confirmation of the following appointment that was presented to the City Council at the March 2 regular session meeting to the Transportation Commission. Brett Hadamaki. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Ackerman, second by Councilmember Malawi. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. I have a couple announcements with respect to work sessions. The April 13 work session is canceled, and we will make sure that that content is incorporated into future sessions. With respect to the 323 and the 330 budget work sessions, those meetings as public meetings are canceled due to COVID-19. However, there will be, in those contexts, online presentations that will be viewable by council at the scheduled times, as well as the public. So we'll pretend we're here in the staff, they'll be able to speak to us, and we'll be able to get questions, hopefully to them in real time, that they can then present to the public as a whole. This way we reduce folks coming on in.
If I may?
Please.
So I've had a question about that, because people have asked, how can we get together? How can we do things like, like I had scheduled a group of folks to want to talk about the tiny house concept here to help our homeless community. And that was this morning with my regular office hours. And so does the city, is there any ability for the city to provide us with, like a party line, 800 number call-in kind of situation? Or do we have tools like that available to us as public, representatives to help facilitate the kinds of things that we normally would be doing in person, having our coffee hours, having our meetings and things like that?
I can look into that. Staff has some bridge lines that we use for staff work. I'm happy to look into something beyond that.
Yeah, because I know we had one meeting where we had the Zoom conference. Chris, you were in, Mr. Taylor, you were in with that one where we talked about the One County initiatives that we were working on. And we used a Zoom platform for that, so I know it exists around City Hall here. So I just wondered if you could fill us in on access. I think that would help a lot of us out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to recommend the following nomination for your consideration to the Housing Board of Appeals, Timothy Durham. Timothy Durham. And then closing, before getting to the balance of the agenda, I'd like to take this opportunity to speak with the public about what COVID-19 means for Ann Arbor and what it means to be a good community member while we respond to this pandemic. The City of Ann Arbor's mission, as folks know, is to deliver exceptional services that sustain and enhance a vibrant and safe community. This mission is especially critical today as we work to support our community during what is an unprecedented public health crisis. As folks know and have alluded today, Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed a statewide executive order. This order temporarily closes theaters, bars, gyms, recreation centers, and casinos statewide, and it limits restaurants to carry out and delivery orders. This runs through March 30. The order does not apply to office buildings, grocery stores, food pantries, pharmacies, or manufacturing distribution centers. I would urge everyone in our community to heed this executive order and to follow CDC social distancing recommendations. You've heard them by now, but they bear repeating. 6 feet distance between people, proper hygiene such as washing your hands with soap and water for 20 seconds, covering your sneeze, and avoiding contact with persons who are sick or if you yourself are exhibiting symptoms. We need to know that this is not a snow day. You know, school is not out for summer. And that means that everyone, the young, the old, and people in between, everyone in between, needs to take rigorous preventative measures by staying home whenever possible, avoiding congregating in homes, in playgrounds or parks. We need to do these things to lower our community's exposure to the virus. We need to know that diligent action will save lives. Beginning tomorrow, further on March 17, in order to additionally prevent the spread of COVID-19, as has been announced, we are going to be closing City Hall and City of Ann Arbor buildings and non-critical services. This is going to run through April 5th. Where possible, staff will work remotely, and they will be able to continue services thereby. And I want members of the public, I want to encourage them to conduct city business online whenever possible. There will be some slowdowns in non-essential services, but I want folks to be assured that these measures will not impact critical service delivery, such as drinking water, wastewater, police, fire, trash, and recycling pickup. Under all circumstances, these services will continue. Our emergency operations team will also continue to coordinate with the state, local agencies, the Washtenaw County Health Department, and we will take additional steps, if necessary, to protect our community and to slow the spread of virus. These have been unprecedented times, and since the crisis broke, I've been in fair constant contact with city staff as they work to ensure the safety of the community. And frankly, I've been amazed and grateful for what I have seen. Staff has up and down responded to this crisis. They've done so with diligence and care and speed and forethought, and it's been something else. And so the next time you see a city worker, as you're out and about in the public, whether they're in a vehicle or on the street, whether they're in a police car or a fire truck, give them a wave. Members of the public, you should know that the staff of the city is here to work for us in the worst of times, and they are earning our thanks. With respect to individuals, I'd say that there is a lot of information about what's going on in the city with respect to the municipal organization, and you can always find out what's going on at a2gov.org/COVID-19. There you'll learn what's going on with respect to our organization, information from the county health department, as well as, and this has been alluded to by members of the public, very important information with respect to community activities. We have a lot of folks in need in our community, a lot of businesses in need in our community, a lot of individuals in need in our community, and we also have agencies and organizations that are poised to help. And you, as members of the public, can go to our website, find some points of entry, and do your part. And finally, I guess I also want to say, too, that I myself am particularly proud of the community at large. As council members here have alluded, and as so many members of the public have experienced, you've demonstrated how you care for each other during these extraordinary times. What I'm doing is I'm asking for your continued courage and your continued patience and your further commitment to do everything that you can in your power to help stop the spread of this virus. It's my firm belief that the Ann Arbor community has risen to this challenge and will rise further to this challenge, that we will draw strength from what are our fundamental values of equity, friendship, and neighborliness, and that we will meet this challenge with kindness, determination, and resolve. In Ann Arbor, we care for ourselves and we care for each other, and frankly, I think we're all going to get through this together. So thank you, and we're going to get on with the business of council, and we look forward to doing your work tonight. We now have before us the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Councilmember Grant. Discussion. Councilmember Ramlawi.
Could I pull the following, CA 14, CA 19, and CA 20?
Further discussion of the consent agenda? Councilmember Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any items to pull out, but I would like to comment on 3 items. CA5, the park donation from Woodbury Club Apartments, CA6, the LDFA fiber project, and CA16, the electric vehicle purchases. Again, CA5 is to accept the parkland donation from the Woodbury Club Apartments, which is now called the Annex, developers. The donation was part of the development agreement approved back in 2016, and my comment relates to a response to one of my questions. I asked if this developer and the Nixon Farms developer would be contributing funding for the Nixon Corridor Improvement Project, and the response was that they would not be contributing any funding. Both developers had contributed to the Nixon Green Duvarn intersection improvements, but I thought their commitment to participate in future improvement projects would include the corridor project as well.
Councilmember Lum, I'm sorry to interrupt you. This has been pulled from the agenda. If you,
CA5 has?
it has,
Yeah, because of 8
as an
votes.
8-vote item.
Okay, can you, okay, sorry.
No worries, I should have realized that when you addressed it,
Okay, so this will come back.
as well as 16.
16 was pulled?
Yes.
How about CA6?
I would like to. I was going to.
CA16 was pulled?
Just the 8 items, 8 vote items.
CA16 has not yet been pulled.
6?
Or, 6 has not been pulled.
Okay. So the one before us then of these 3 is just CA6, sorry,
Correct.
my apologies. I didn't go back to check what required
Never worried,
votes, sorry.
never worried.
So, a positive comment then on CA6, which is the resolution to accept the grant from the AA Ann Arbor IPSI Smart Zone LDFA for the installation of fiber optic and conduit infrastructure downtown. I pulled this out, this is a big deal, and the grant from the LDFA is for up to $5 million, which is obviously significant, and this is also great to see. For those folks who've been around, this is something former council member Kyla Sapathi and I pushed for a couple years back as we were concerned none of the LDFA dollars were going for infrastructure and capital. We were told it was coming, and sure enough, it's here. So this is very encouraging and exciting, and I extend my thanks to city staff and to the LDFA folks for making this happen. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thank you. I'd like to pull CA 19, and I had a comment on 6 also.
CA19's been pulled.
Yeah.
CA6 is all yours.
So just to comment on 6, my questions when I first saw this was, who's paying for this and then who benefits from it? And this is a downtown-centric thing. And that's well and good because that's where a lot of our high-tech lives. But I think that we're seeing right now, I know with the public schools had some concerns about this notion that there were concerns about canceling the schools. Of course, that didn't come out because people didn't have access to high-speed internet in their homes out there in the community, not downtown, but everywhere else in the community. And so I guess my hope on this is that this acts as some kind of core structure or backbone of something we can extend to the rest of the community in the not too distant future so that we don't have to worry about things like distance learning, that folks might not have equitable access to the internet and so on out in the neighborhoods. And I appreciate that this benefits the downtown and this core of these downtown businesses and so on, and the city itself. But I just want to see these kinds of things extended out into the community in a way that is, kind of benefits the city as a whole. Thank you.
Further discussion of the consent agenda as amended?
We'll respond to CA6 just a little bit. I do sit on the LDFA board, and this has been talked about since I joined the board about a year ago. There's a lot of requirements and restrictions on the funding and where and how it can be spent. Effectively, there's a healthy fund balance, and it needs to be spent one way or another, and if we don't, I believe we risk losing it. So this idea to lay fiber here is just, it seems to be the best way to use those funds in a way to further our city, making it a top city in the state, perhaps in the nation when it comes to connectivity, becoming a smart city, knowing when our streetlights are out, when our signals are out, knowing what's going on in our city in real time with an infrastructure that we own, and also has the benefits, obviously, for private enterprise as well. So I would leave, if Mr. Crawford's here, and he knows quite a bit about this, and if there's anything that he would like to add on it, but just on a 30,000-foot level, this does seem to be a wise investment, and I'm comforted to know that my colleagues, at least Councilmember Lum right now, is in support of it. We haven't really talked about this as a body, and to know that it has the support of members like Councilmember Lum is significant.
Further discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda as pulled and amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda is approved with the exception of, well, this is going to take some time. With the exception of CA 5, CA 8, CA 10, CA 14, 19, and 20, CA 16, CA 17, CA 18. CA 14, resolution to approve a best source lease agreement with Big Belly Solar, Inc. for lease of solar compacting trash and recyclable containers, $23,290.08 for year one, and two, not to exceed $150,000 for year five. Moved by Councilmember Ramlawi, seconded by Councilmember Ackerman. Discussion, please, of CA 14. Councilmember Ramlawi.
Appreciate it. With everything going on, I didn't get a chance to put in my questions, and this is one that I missed an opportunity, but Mr. Hoopie's here, so perhaps he can answer for me. This calls for 10 containers for 5 years, budget total amount of $150,000. I'm just curious as to know where they're going to be placed. Is this a part of a bigger program? Just to me, it seems like we're spending a lot of money, and just to get a better sense of the direction this is going.
Craig Hupie, Public Services Area Administrator. I'll start off at the very high level, but Molly Maczewski is here to talk about specific sightings. We already have some of these containers in our downtown area, and we do know they function. The plan is to put them in what we would call high-volume areas where the containers get used, and these containers allow us to do is not have to service them until they need to be serviced, so we don't make unnecessary trips out to the containers. And on that, I'll let Molly talk about specifics.
Thank you. So we have 10 sets that we've ordered, or we'll be ordering if this gets approved tonight, and we'll put them at our highest pedestrian traffic locations, and we'll position them on opposite corners, and they actually can hold about 4 times the amount that a regular, the traditional pedestrian cans can handle. And they compact, and they're solar operated, so they'll hold much more, and then they'll send us an alert as they get 20% full, 40% full, 60% full, whatever alerts that we want to get, so that then we know to go out and service. So operationally, we'll be able to handle more volume and save time that way. We actually have, as Craig mentioned, some already downtown, and so we're able to monitor their performance, and then we can reposition them in locations where we see higher volumes so that we can make sure that we don't have overflowing trash cans.
I appreciate it. So this, in essence, could perhaps save us money. And has it shown to say, I mean, besides anecdotally, do we have any data to suggest?
We don't have any data right now, other than we know areas where we used to service daily, we're down to once a week. And so we haven't calculated that, but we plan to monitor that in the first year if these get approved and we put them in. And then we can actually calculate the savings to determine if we'd like to continue on beyond our lease agreement term and then add more.
Appreciate you being here tonight and answering that question.
Further discussion? Councilor Grant.
Thank you. Just briefly, this is one of the concerns I hear from residents. I wouldn't say it's like top 3, but it's definitely up there about overflowing trash in our downtown. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad that it's being addressed in an environmentally responsible, sustainable way.
Yeah, thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's approved.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
CA 19, resolution to approve an agreement with the Downtown Development Authority for the First and Ashley Street Improvement Project, moved by Councilmember Ramlawi, seconded by Councilmember Graham. Discussion of CA 19. Councilmember Ramlawi.
I just bring this up to talk about it from the point of view of just concern in the sense of how long these construction projects take, the impact they have on residents, businesses, operations, bus lines, everything. Just wanted to get maybe a little bit of an update from Ms. Palais, if I could, as to a little bit to alleviate those concerns, if they've been addressed in terms of timetable. I know in the past there was talk of doing all 3 streets at once. Has there been anything that's been scaled back or looked at, anything different? Are we attacking how many streets at once? Because it is a very significant part of our downtown, 2 heavily used thoroughfares, and major disruption if the plan was and still is to do both roads at the same time.
So thank you very much. This is Susan Podley from the Ann Arbor DDA. I don't have with me yet the specific construction schedule. We're just now meeting with the contractor. He's just been hired. The understanding that I have preliminarily is we'll focus almost all of our efforts in the first 2 years on First Street. That's where most of the infrastructure will be going in. It's where most of the infrastructure is needed. We will not be tackling, as I understand it, both streets at the same time and having both streets shut down. We learned a lot from the last 2 projects, in particular the 5th and Detroit project, on how to conduct the construction in a way that minimizes impact. We'll be in the road, though, and I don't want to miss the chance to say that when you're doing things like water main consolidations, when you're doing the infrastructure, unfortunately, it does take time when you're in the street to get that work done. But to the extent we can, keeping everyone informed, finding out from the stakeholders their needs to make sure that we wrap the construction around what's going on with them, we will certainly do everything we can. But I don't have the exact schedule at this time.
Are you dealing with abandoned vaults on this street as well, and updated records and missing information, and we don't know what's in the ground until we put a hole in it?
Yeah, we have much more information than ever was in hand before. About a year or so ago, the city did a ground-penetrating radar project, and we were able to map the location of many of the vaults in downtown. But I can tell you that just having done Huron Street this last year, we found 3 on Huron that had not been found, that were on the south side. Just last week, we were on the north side. We found some again on the north side that had not been recorded before. So unfortunately, when you're in a historic downtown, those are the kind of surprises that you find. We work with the property owner to work with them, if possible, to close up the vault. This is an opportunity to gain back the right-of-way for the public. And with their permission, we fill them in, we get new walking surface. And in the case on Huron Street, that's what was going on, both on the south side and on the north side. With Ashley Street, we know there are some vaults. We know those locations. It doesn't mean we won't find others that are coming as a surprise, but we have a very good recording on Ashley Street of where they're located.
So as far as I understand it, do you believe this will all be done in one construction year? Or no?
No,
It'll be
this
two.
is definitely a 2-year project. There's an enormous amount of infrastructure that needs to be tackled, particularly on First Street. All new electrical, we've got all sorts of work with the water mains, new water mains going in, and we know a lot of sidewalk work as well. So no, there's no way it'll be done in one. Very likely First Street is two full construction years.
All right, thank you.
Further discussion of CA 19? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. CA 20, resolution number 2. Resolution number 2, proposed Fuller Court and Nixon Traver Sidewalk Gap Project, Special Assessment Districts 57 and 56. Moved by Councilmember Amlawi, seconded by Councilmember Lum. Discussion of CA 20, Councilmember Amlawi.
Thank you. I just bring this up just as a chance to talk about our policy when it comes to filling in sidewalk gaps and special assessments and the issues that arise when approving them. Again, I feel like we need to approach this slightly different in the years to come. I don't have a particular problem with this, but I do think we need to, at least it's my opinion, I'm not sure if there's consensus on council, is to smooth out the peaks and valleys of these assessments. When we talk about sidewalk gaps, they're for the greater good, but yet homeowners with large frontage are penalized at an exorbitant, I shouldn't say penalized, but are at least assessed an exorbitant amount of money, which causes friction and it causes projects not to be completed. And we've seen it before where we take a lot of staff's time to talk about things and ultimately don't get the final approval because of the financial impact on the homeowner or the property owner. I will continue to speak with my colleagues and others as to ways to find a way to have a co-pay when it comes to these assessments, so that the first several $1,000s are assessed by the property owner, the next several $1,000s are assessed by a joint city and property owner, and then anything above a certain amount is then shouldered by the city. I feel that there's just too much conflict in the current state of affairs. When we have a capital improvement project going in, we use that as an opportunity to do it, in which I feel that is an intelligent way to spend money, but yet we don't end up getting projects approved because of the inequity in the assessments. So I just, again, I'll bring this up at every opportunity I can get until something different is done. Thank you.
Further discussion of CA 20, Councilmember Hayner, then
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to support these needed sidewalk gap fillings here, but I think one of the things that happens with these is I wish that we had a way to encourage perhaps a better way to encourage the folks who are most directly benefiting from these kinds of things to sort of spread out the maintenance that they do. And I know we've talked about this internally a little bit, where some of these are benefiting the schools, or it benefits a hospital, or something like that. And you know, they only have they're only charged with you're only charged with the maintenance of the sidewalk directly in front of your property, directly adjacent to your property. But I think that where we're headed as a city is that we'd like some of these larger institutions like the schools and the university and so on to maybe just do a little tiny bit more, just a little bit more. I think if the school would have stepped up and said, hey, you know, we'll run our guy all the way around the block onto Traver, instead of just being silent on that matter, we wouldn't have had the controversy over the Traver sidewalks that we did, when those are really, the primary function of that was to serve as a drop-off zone for the North Side School. And so I just throwing it out there that the community benefits as a whole, yes, from these common goods, but at the same time, I think that some folks are in a better position to help the neighborhood in maintaining them.
Councilmember Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I generally have mixed feelings on these when the folks objecting don't seem to want the sidewalks, and the feedback from the public meetings was that the folks don't seem to want the sidewalk or they think they're needed. And there were concerns about the assessment amounts, which are significant at up to $8,000, even with the Surface Transportation Program grant funding. But as we know, filling gaps has been identified as a priority, and this does follow the standard process and includes a grant. And this is not the final approval. We're just, of course, establishing the dollar amounts. We're not approving the project. And prior to the council vote, there will be a public hearing. And I would just note that I would expect, the cover memo notes that the city is in discussions with the public schools in the U of M regarding bearing the costs of the sidewalks and that are adjacent to their property. And I would expect the University of Michigan and the Ann Arbor Public Schools to agree to pay their fair share. I did ask a question about this, and the Ann Arbor Public Schools share would be $4,700, and the U of M share would be $67,400. And clearly, they need to step up and do what every other property owner is expected to do. And I know that this, in the Fuller Court area particularly benefits a lot of university students. I've been invited by folks at Huron Towers to come and just view where these students walk, and yeah, I mean, the students crossing Fuller from North Campus to wherever they live, they walk here. Folks going to the Veteran VA Hospital, on and on and on. There's a lot of U of M usage, and again, they need to do what every other property owner is expected to do in terms of paying for these new sidewalks. And so I look forward to this coming back with them being fully on board, the public schools and the university, and paying their fair share. Thanks.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. We now come to a public hearing. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and community about a specific item on the agenda. In order to speak at a public hearing, you need not have signed up in advance, but your speech must relate to the specific subject of the public hearing. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time clock. As a matter of courtesy, we may have only one person speaking at a time. And finally, if you require assistance in speaking before council today, we'd be delighted to provide it to you. Public hearing number 1, resolution to approve the Capozzo annexation, 0.74 acres, 17680 Scioto Church Road. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We now have before us the minutes, the special session of February 21, 2020, and the regular session meeting minutes of March 20, 2020. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Hayner, seconded by Councilmember Lum. Discussion of the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. C2, C2, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, rezoning of 0.52 acres from TWP Township District to R1A Single Family Dwelling District. Ashaganon property, 715 Heather Way. Moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of C2. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. An ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, rezoning of 1.3 acres from PUD, Planned Unit Development District, to PL, Public Land District, 385 East Eisenhower Parkway. Moved by Councilmember Grand, seconded by Councilmember Ackerman. Discussion, please, of C3. Councilmember Lum.
Just thanks. Thank you, because these are all being zoned to public land. These are properties that are city parkland, were donated or purchased as part of private developments over the years, so I appreciate the cleanup.
We good? Please, clerk.
If these are not critical in the next few weeks, if we could push out the second reading, because we don't have staff in the office to do the public hearing notices.
Sure. So to what date do you recommend? Say the first meeting in May? Is that too far?
That would be great.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Sure. All right, so with council's acquiescence, we'll move the public hearings on CA2 through CA7 to the first meeting in May. We all good? I think I had a motion and a second on C3, and a comment. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. C4, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, rezoning of 16 acres from R4A with conditions, multifamily dwelling district to PL, Public Land District, Buttonbush Nature Area, 2601 Duvarin Road. Moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Councilmember Hayner. Discussion, please, of C4. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. C5, ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, rezoning of 1.5 acres from R4B Multifamily Dwelling District to PL Public Land District, Hanson Nature Area, 1200 South Maple Road. Moved by Councilmember Lowy, seconded by Councilmember Ackerman. Discussion of C5. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. C6, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, rezoning of 2.0 acres from R1D Single Family Dwelling District to PL Public Land District, Hickory Nature Area, 2817 Dillon Drive. Moved by Councilmember Hayner, seconded by Councilmember Lum. Discussion of C6. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. C7, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, rezoning of 25 acres from R4A Multifamily Dwelling District to PL Public Land District, Oakwoods Nature Area Addition, 3200 Green Road. Moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of C7. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. DC1, resolution urging the state of Michigan to adopt House Bill 4212 and Senate Bill 116, the so-called Polluter Pays Act. Moved by Councilmember Hayner, seconded by Councilmember Lum. Discussion of DC1. Councilmember Hayner.
A worthy cause, working its way through the House and Senate, and they know we have our support. Now they really know that they have our support. So I urge everyone to say yes.
Councilmember Lum.
Yes, this is, of course, being sponsored by the Policy Agenda Committee. Councilmember Hayner and I serve on that committee, and the House bills that Councilmember Hayner was referencing, I would just note that they've been introduced by our local representatives, Robbie, Warren, Lazinski, and this House bill has now been assigned to the Committee on Natural Resources. And then Senate Bill 116 has been introduced by Senator Jeff Irwin. That's assigned to a Committee on Environmental Quality. Neither bill has been scheduled for a hearing at this point, and it's obviously something I think all have been advocating for, and I don't know where this is all going to, how this is all going to play out, because I believe the state legislature is also about to go into a 30-day recess. So, but it's in the pipeline, and again, neither bill has been scheduled for a hearing, but we're ahead of the curve, I guess. Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved.
Can this be split
It's
into a,
already been taken off.
it's
DC
been
two?
scrubbed, or should it be split into a two-appointment situation?
We need it.
Hesitate. Can we have a motion to alter the agenda to move to, how about by acclamation, we put DC2 after DC5? Oh, they're coming back.
Yeah, second.
Yeah. Okay, so by acclamation, DC1 is moved after DC2 rather is moved after DC5. DC3, resolution directing the Planning Commission to create a transit-supported development district, moved by Councilmember Ackerman, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of DC3. Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Public health officials advised that during the COVID outbreak that you continue with your daily routines as you would otherwise. So my daily routine is getting your blood boiling to some extent. So I continued with that. But given the circumstances, I'd like to move to postpone this until April 6th.
Seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of postponement. Councilmember Grand.
Thank you. I just want to extend my appreciation for all the work that Councilmember Ackerman has done on this, as well as just that we've heard from Well, we don't have members of the public here, which I know is a concern. We have heard from dozens, if not, I don't know, I would say I've gotten close to 100 emails, and about 97% of them were in support of DC3. So to all of those who reached out, just want to recognize that that was heard, that I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of this and look forward to supporting it at our first meeting in April.
Councilor Lum.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll have a lot more to say on this when it comes back on April 6th, but I certainly support the postponement, and I'm glad to see that that's what we're doing tonight. At least that's what it appears to be, that what we'll be doing. Creating this transit-supported zoning district is an important policy decision and one that many in the community have strong views on. And because of that, with this item on the agenda, the likely result would have been a room full of folks, I believe. And that's the last thing that we all recognize we should be encouraging at this point. So I appreciate that common sense is prevailing and the sponsors have agreed to the postponement. And to be honest, for reasons I won't get into tonight, reasons largely related to conducting a robust community discussion on this significant change to zoning and its implications, and related to the timing vis-a-vis the master plan update and other planning commission work. I believe a longer postponement or tabling is more appropriate, but I will support the short-term postponement and provide my full comments at the next meeting. So thanks.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
If I may, just to pull back, I guess I would like to, for my part, prior to the vote, if I may thank Councilmember Ackerman for bringing this forward. I believe it's proper and appropriate to have this postponed, but at the same time, I'd like to say that I fully support this concept. I think folks in the community have made very clear that they need more housing, and they need more housing that is proximate to transportation corridors. That will affect multiple goals. Of course, a goal with respect to climate change, but also I believe a goal with respect to affordability for these are, if not by law, likely to be affordable. They would certainly, I believe, by nature of the market, be more affordable than apartments in other locations. That is to say, residences on transit corridors. I'm delighted to continue the conversation. Further discussion? All in favor of the postponement?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? It is postponed to our next meeting. DC4, resolution to approve a street closing for a celebration commemorating the 50th anniversary of Earth Day on April 22nd, 2020. Moved by Councilmember Ackerman, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of DC4. Councilmember Lum.
My only concern here, obviously, I would have no issue with this in normal times, but we're not in normal times, obviously, and April 22nd isn't that far off, just a month away. And I don't think the city should be sponsoring or planning any group gatherings at this point. You know, I recognize that the 50th anniversary of Earth Day is a significant occasion, but I am concerned that we could be, you know, spending time and money planning an event where there's a good chance we may need to cancel it, so just putting that out there. And as you know, we've been canceling left and right all these street closures and events that we have previously approved. So I think we just need to be cautious in going forward in terms of the effort that goes into this.
Mr. Crawford?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, staff has been working on this, and as we look forward, you know, we were anticipating that if it appears that it's not going to work, that we need to cancel more events going out, not just this event or anything else, that we would cancel this event. But one of the benefits we thought of continuing with the planning at this stage is that when things do open back up, having a celebration downtown would be beneficial, and this may be one of the first ones. We just don't know on the timing yet. So if council approves this, staff is looking at this from a perspective that we're going to keep planning it until it didn't make sense if you approve it.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Hayner. Further discussion? Councilmember Ramlawi.
Yeah, I'd like to echo the sentiments of Councilmember Lum. I know just speaking with staff about the amount of resources that our city has expended on street closures and special events last year caused significant delays in providing other types of services for the city at a great expense. I will continue to caution these street closures while we have the city of the center sitting vacant and Liberty Plaza unprogrammed. So as we continue to go forward and hopefully having a semblance of a normal functioning society, that we plan these things in areas of downtown that don't have the significant impact that these street closures have on small businesses. I mean, as a small business owner, I can tell you, 9 out of 10 of these events hurt our business. People can't come and get their goods or services. That snarls traffic, leads people to drive erratically, dangerously. It's just not a good mix. I appreciate our city administrator's optimism, and I hope that comes true. One thing I did find through my experiences of being in downtown is that in the summertime, when the students are gone, the last weekend of each month, perhaps, we can have a downtown celebration that is scheduled, with predictability and frequency, rather than just these irregular pop-ups that occur randomly, and if you're not in that certain social group, you have no idea what's going on. So we do have assets, we have real estate to hold these things. We need to shift our focus. This is going to be a difficult time downtown for many business owners. When we do get back to normal, they're going to be very sensitive to things. And we're going to continue to do more street closures. When they do reopen, it's not really going to help them. Thank you.
Pardon me. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. DC 5, resolution to appoint Matthew Horning as the City of Ann Arbor Interim Controller and Chief Financial Officer. Moved by Councilmember Ackerman, moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Councilmember Grant. Discussion of DC 5. Councilmember Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to be a co-sponsor with you on this resolution to appoint Matthew Horning as the interim city controller and CFO. Matt has served effectively in this interim role previously, filling in for Tom Crawford, and Tom recommends that we appoint him again. The appointment would be until Mr. Crawford returns to the CFO position or council makes other appointments. I've worked closely with Matt on the insurance board and on other matters when he was city treasurer, and I've always been impressed with his work, his knowledge, and his skills. As Mr. Crawford does, I have full confidence Matt will perform this role effectively and that he's the right person for the position. I encourage all of my colleagues to support this interim appointment, and thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Grant.
Just want to also express my appreciation that he's actually coming out of retirement to help serve our city in this capacity. So that means a great deal.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. I guess I'd look to Mr. Postma for some assistance on DC 2, which we moved over to this location. It's a one-step appointment, ideally with an 8-vote requirement. Are we able to waive that rule at this point with 6 council members present? Waive the 8-vote requirement for a one-step vote to appoint Mr. Crawford to the DDA?
Because he lives out of town? Or
No,
what is the issue?
it's a one-step appointment, thereby requiring a supermajority. I assume that we can't, with a minority, with a bare majority, waive a supermajority requirement in our council rules.
That is correct.
All right, so with council's acquiescence, let's put off DC 2 to brighter days. Maybe let's have it be a two-step vote in case at our next meeting we don't have a supermajority. How's that?
Yeah, I'd move to change this to a 2-step vote.
All right, so resolution to appoint DC 2, resolution to appoint Tom Crawford to the Downtown Development Authority, moved by Councilmember Hayner, seconded by Councilmember Grant. Councilmember Hayner.
Thank you. I know this is because, that you will continue to serve in this role despite the lack of a formal appointment, and I appreciate that. And let's just move this forward here. And is it by council rule or the charter that the administrator serves on the DDA board? I don't know. It's council rule,
It's
charter,
by, I
right?
think state law.
State law?
It's either him or me.
It's charter.
Okay.
And
You want it, huh, Mr. Crawford? Okay. All right, well, I'll support this.
further discussion, Councilmember Lum.
Thanks, yeah, I absolutely support this. It's per the city charter. It's either the mayor or the city administrator serves in the DDA. And it certainly makes sense for the city administrator to serve on the DDA. That's been the practice. It's simply, the call between the mayor and the city administrator, and this simply follows recent practice, actually for a number of recent city administrators, I believe. Well, no, Mayor Hefia did serve on the DDA. But generally speaking, I think this is more typical. So thank you for stepping up. Thanks for suggesting a two-step process so we can get this ball rolling.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved. We have DC 7, which doesn't appear on the paper agenda, but it does appear on the electronic agenda. Mr. Postma?
Yes, and I sent off, and I'm sorry, I just missed it. City Administrator Crawford did a draft of this resolution. I did another draft, and my resolution, the resolved clause, I think that he's going to add. And the reason was not in his resolution, but it is in mine, and that is under the city's emergency ordinance, the mayor can make a declaration of a local state of emergency. Clearly, under Chapter 15, he has that power. However, it expires within 7 days unless the council by majority vote at an open public meeting moves to extend that beyond the 7 days. And I certainly recommend that be extended for a number of reasons as we move forward. There are all sorts of benefits of having this in place, both as to state funding and powers that we may need. So I strongly recommend this, but that's why it's on tonight, and that's why it's been done quickly, and why I'm thankful that at this meeting there's a quorum of 6 that can vote on this.
So that's DC 7, resolution to continue mayor's declaration of local state emergency, moved by Councilmember Ackerman, seconded by Councilmember Hayner. Discussion further of DC 7. Councilmember Ackerman.
Just by way of process, the language of DC 7 in Legistar appears to be different than Mr. Postma's. Do you want a replacement or an amendment of an insertion?
I think that I like Mr. Crawford's language. It was done in less haste than mine upstairs, and so the only change.
Can you come to the podium so people can hear you? Not here we can hear you, it's
Yeah, I would recommend that my resolved clause about continuing it past the 23rd be included. So I think with that change, his is quite
That's a
fine.
whereas
Great.
clause.
I would,
so just to be clear,
Swap out one resolved clause.
let me suggest this. There was an email distributed to us at 8:19 from you. Is that the proper version of the resolution?
We
No,
got
I
it
would
15 minutes
recommend
ago.
taking that resolved clause that I have and adding it to Mr. Crawford's, which is currently on DC 7.
So, are you tracking this? Go ahead.
yeah, I am.
Thank you.
So you would like us to insert your single resolved clause from your email into Mr. Crawford's, the body of his resolution as a third resolved clause?
Yes.
All right. So moved, I would
No,
move.
it would be the first.
The first resolved clause.
Yes.
I'm seeing one and only one resolve clause. Can someone read this?
In Legistar? No, in Legistar, Mr. Crawford wrote a version with 2 resolved clauses. Later tonight, Mr. Postma emailed us a resolution with 1 resolved
15
clause.
minutes ago. That's the one I'm looking at.
Yeah, but the one in Legistar, which we need to amend because that's the official one on the
When was
record.
that added?
To Legistar? Today.
After the meeting, right?
It was prior to your meeting.
Just prior?
I saw
When
it
we were in
this evening,
executive
or
session?
afternoon, maybe.
We were in executive session, so I didn't
No, of course.
Right,
see that.
that's why we-
So we're all gonna read it?
let's do this.
So I have not seen the legislative version.
Here.
Councilmember Ackerman, perhaps you could read the resolution in its entirety for everyone.
Thank
Correct.
you.
And you would like your resolve clause to be first or last?
I would like it to be the first resolved clause in
Perfect.
replacing Mr. Crawford's first resolved clause.
I'm going to read the entire thing into the record and calling out the amendment that I'm making at the same time.
The amendment, which is the city attorney's amendment.
Exactly right. Correct. An insertion of an extra resolved clause. Whereas the spread of COVID-19 is considered a global pandemic, whereas the federal and state government have declared a state of emergency in order to lessen the impact of COVID-19, whereas some local uses of resources may be reimbursable from federal or state government at a future date if a local state of emergency is declared, whereas the City of Ann Arbor desires to rigorously pursue efforts to reduce the spread of COVID-19 for its residents and visitors in order to protect their health and safety, and whereas the mayor of the City of Ann Arbor, as the chief elected official, declared a local state of emergency on March 16th, 2020. Now I'm going to move to insert a resolved clause that reads, resolved that the mayor's declaration of local state of emergency is hereby extended and continued until the city council votes to discontinue this local state of emergency declaration.
Is there a second?
Well, there's two other resolved.
No,
That's
second to
it.
your amendment.
Oh, second to the amendment. Thank you.
Second, continue to read.
The second to, or the next resolved clauses read, resolved that the council concurs and supports the mayor's declaration of a local state of emergency. And finally, resolved that the city clerk provide the attached declaration to Michigan State Police and the District 2 South Emergency Management and Homeland Security Division Coordinator.
Discussion of DC 7. Councilmember,
Oh, we should vote on the amendment.
sorry, discussion of the amendment. Is that friendly, the amendment for the body?
Yes.
Thank you, friendly. Councilmember Hayner, discussion.
So,
Before you say that, let me, if I may, apologize for a little bit of confusion for council. As folks know, we were discussing over the course of the weekend, declaring an emergency for, in part for the purpose of closing bars and restaurants, but for dine-in and delivery. This was something that the city was prepared to do on its own lights. However, the
Takeout.
right, yes, except for takeout and delivery, absolutely. This was something the city was prepared to do on its own lights. However, in the intervening time, since we sort of had that, was not an internal discussion, but I had stated my desire, and so you had known that this was in the potential in the offing. The state moved on the point, thus obviating the need for the action. The state of emergency, however, continues to exist. I'm proposing, and I suspect you'll concur, and this resolution seeks to ratify that declaration, permit its extension beyond 7 days for the purposes identified by Mr. Postema, and then when the state of emergency is passed, we will as a body declare it so. So there is no additional action, additional public restriction, additional use of resources associated with this declaration. It is merely ratifying the declaration, permitting those things to occur downstream should they be necessary. And my apologies for not making that clear from the jump. Councilmember Hayner.
well, thanks. I just want to make two comments. The first one is, well, three actually. Thank you for, I didn't see it because I guess I have a Luddite roll tonight. I don't have any devices with me, so I didn't get to see any of this. So this will be unusual. I'm going to vote for this on your suggestions. And that your initial declaration of local state emergency is attached, which I didn't, so thank you for that. And is it possible that this would also have the potential to cover expenditures as a suggested $200K to avoid foreclosures in our community? So would that potentially give us the wherewithal to shift funds about in anticipation of recouping those funds at a future time when 8 of us are here at the table, et cetera? Does that seem like that would be appropriately applied to that?
That would be something that we're going to include, should that opportunity open up, we will include anything that we can, and I would think that would be one on the table.
Okay. I think that's entirely appropriate, and I encourage the use for that, so thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. Yeah, this came to us fast and furious, just like everything is. And during our discussions over the weekend, we talked about taking actions, and in those actions, having some answers for some really low-hanging questions, and a lot of them are sunset provisions. Most people will ask how long. Okay, we can do this, but for how long? And those questions will continue to remain. So with this, I just will be supporting it with some hesitation in the fact that as a body in policymaking, part of me feels like we are surrendering part of our decision-making in this declaration. And what I want to ask is, what are we surrendering in this? What if it can be told to us in a very short bit here? What powers is council surrendering?
Well, council, in some ways, is not surrendering anything but taking the power to themselves. The mayor has, under Chapter 15, 7 days in which he can declare a state of emergency, a local state of emergency, and can act within those 7 days with or without council's approval on a number of things. The main one being actually there's a provision the mayor could issue directives as to travel restrictions on the local roads, for example. That's something, and you can imagine before a meeting could even be called, you could have a type of emergency where that would be necessary. So so that's one thing. But the statute again really requires the mayor to involve the council, to have meetings. Interestingly, a lot of people have asked about this, but under Chapter 15, even the emergency meetings are required to meet under the Open Meetings Act. And that means, it sort of begs the question that people had concerns about, well, should we cancel meetings? Should we not have the public come? That's something that we're working out right now. There is no state law that allows a public meeting to not allow the public to come. And so does that make sense in a situation like this? I'm not sure it does, but that's the wisdom of the legislature, and perhaps the governor will alter that with a rule if in fact that can be done. So that is the main purpose of declaring a local emergency, is the ability to recoup funds from the time that such a declaration is made. That's the main, if you're asking what is the benefit, it's not what you're surrendering, it's what you're gaining.
And of course, I think we've called it once before when the mayor was out of country. Council can call a special meeting with just 3 council members, correct?
That's right.
With that in mind, I will be supporting this. I do urge the mayor to keep us in the loop. I know a lot of things are changing and changing fast, and I really sometimes we ain't getting the information from sources we thought we'd get them from. We're getting them from other sources, and as we move forward, I just would just encourage channeling it so we do get it in one format and in constant update with our city administrator. It is a leap of faith and one that I will make, but I'll just leave it at that, I guess.
Let me also say, under this same Rule 15, they recognize that, and for individual council members, you should all know that the council shall have the power to terminate the local state of emergency. After the 7-day period, they could terminate that. The other thing I will point out, and I'll write the council some more advice about that, is that it does, under a local state of emergency, allow you to have emergency meetings in which time you might want to enact an emergency ordinance, and that can be done with one reading. You don't have to do it, in one reading, but it can be done. And there may be times where you want to do that. We talked about closing the bars or doing other things. And so since you all sit on various committees, you know that the process, with ordinances, sometimes they're drafted by committee and they come here and you have 2 readings, you have a public hearing. Well, there's an expedited reason to do it, and it gives the council the ability to make that. That's not something that the mayor does by himself to enact an ordinance. That's with the council. So you're not surrendering anything, but it gives you an additional opportunity to look at issues. And we don't know what will come. We don't know what emergency council meetings you'll have to do. We don't know what ordinances will have to be done, but that's the power by this declaration.
So I appreciate you here and explaining this to us as we go, learning on the fly. Under this declaration, council itself has special powers, one that you just described under emergency powers.
Yes.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Actually, I'd like to move along typically, but before doing this, I guess I'd like to say, and we've talked a lot about COVID-19 here at the council table, both in council communication, the oral communication, and it's propped up a couple of times throughout the course of the evening, and then of course. Right now it informs all of our lives in so many different ways. If looking outside at the hall, there are chairs spaced more than 6 feet apart to enable anybody that wished to come tonight to do so safely. The COVID-19 crisis is a weighty time for the community, and this is the first time that of which I'm aware since I've been on city council and certainly since I've been mayor, where there has been even the reasonable prospect of the declaration of a local state of emergency. And here, it's a no-brainer. We're living through extraordinary times. I'm grateful to have staff to work with us and for us and guide us during these extraordinary times. The work being done by the municipal organization to serve the community in the ordinary course and in emergencies is incredible. And I just want to say it's my pleasure to be part of it, and I hope that folks here feel the same. Councilmember Hayner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, so I'm not going to be the person who doesn't support this because we could only scrape up a quorum here tonight and stops us from moving forward, because I think the emergency declaration was entirely appropriate. What I am going to do is take solace in the fact that we're extending it beyond 7 days, but that we have a meeting in 14 days, and so that we can, reassess our commitment to this state of emergency. I'm sure that it will extend beyond that. Well, I'm not sure, but I assume it will extend beyond that. But generally, I would say that it doesn't sit well with me to have an open-ended notion of emergency powers floating around in the city. And so, for the public out there who shares those concerns, I'll just say that we're going to be back in 2 weeks, and we can talk about it then, and we can also call a meeting to talk about it for 3 weeks, and talk about it after that also. So I don't see this as a completely open-ended situation. Although I would appreciate it if our Mr. Postema could. This is Chapter 15. Are there any specific subparagraphs or anything that would be of extra interest to me when I go home and get a copy in front of me?
I'll send that to the whole council.
Okay.
What the powers are.
Okay, thank you.
It's section 1.327.
Yeah.
327.
Okay.
But specifically on that note, emergency meetings, special meetings, as you know, can be called by the mayor or 3 council members. And so it is 3 weeks to the next meeting. But I think that the whole design of this is to act fast.
Sure.
But to actually get the power to the whole council. And it specifically says, nothing in this chapter shall be construed as abridging or curtailing the powers of the council unless specifically provided in this section. And I did read you one provision that specifically said 7 days and had to do with the roads, for example. So I will give you additional guidance on this to the whole council, and you can act accordingly, but that's the rationale.
Okay, let's use our powers for good, people.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one final comment. Yeah, whenever we make a declaration or extend a declaration that provides us or other authority figures with more power, I think it should be done carefully. There's no one I would trust more at the helm than Mr. Postman, Mr. Crawford, and Mayor Taylor right now. I think the three of you together are going to work well as a team to keep us all as safe as possible. Mayor Taylor in particular, I'm glad to have someone who, in making a serious decision like closing bars and restaurants, weighed all perspectives, both internally to the organization, but also externally with epidemiologists, and came to that decision quickly, working over the weekend, but deliberatively and thoughtfully. And so I trust you in the utmost to treat these powers with respect and to do so in the interest of the public.
Councilmember Grant.
That's almost precisely what I was going to say. I guess I'll just add on that we do have a lot of experts in our community. I know the city has benefited from some of them directly, and also that we have seen patterns of what's worked and what hasn't worked in other countries around the world. And so let's use those models to our benefit, to our community. And also we know that other communities will be looking to us to see what we're doing. So I trust that it will be used well. And this definitely makes it worth coming out here tonight.
Further discussion? Councilor Lum, sorry.
That's fine. I support this, and I was just confused because I did not even realize that this was being brought forward until after the meeting started. And I guess when it was placed on Legistar, we were in executive session for Mr. Postma's evaluation. And so I also appreciate you're going to follow up with this information, with a memo, an explanatory memo, and the added information from Chapter 15. This is obviously new terrain, and I think that, you know, the track record, as Councilmember Ackerman and others have observed of you, Mr. Crawford, and Mayor Taylor, Mr. Postma, and again, your whole emergency response team that management team that you've assembled has been outstanding. And you've been taking necessary actions in a very nimble, you know, thoughtful, proactive way, and you've been working at this, you've all been working at this pretty much nonstop since we were in this pandemic environment. So I don't think this will be abused in any way, and it's necessary. I think, I mean, I don't think it is necessary. I don't question that it is. And I'm sure our community will benefit from taking this action as well. So thank you again for acting nimbly, and you know, we all, of course, hope that this doesn't extend too long into the future, but we'll be prepared. And I assume that on the state level as well, where the governor made an emergency declaration, and now the legislature is looking at going into recess for a month, I think. I guess that's not yet been confirmed, but they too will be needing to act, you know, in a similar fashion with assigning authority to the governor and, you know, her team in the absence of the elected officials being able to be consulted on various steps that need to be taken, again, in a nimble, flexible, quick way. So, so again, thank you for bringing this forward. Look forward to getting the additional information, and thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved. Do we have communications today from our city? Oh, my apologies. Oh, that's an 8? No, that's not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was 8 voted planning. I see where you said that. DB1, resolution to approve the Capozo annexation, .74 acres, 1780 Scioto Church Road, moved by Councilmember Ackerman, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of DB1. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Now, do we have communications from our city attorney? No, Mayor.
No, Mayor.
Do we have before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals? May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Ackerman, second by Councilmember Malawi. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time clock. As a matter of courtesy, we may have only one person speaking at a time. And finally, if you require assistance in speaking before council today, we would be delighted to provide it to you. Is there anyone who would like to speak at public comment?
Well, I could.
You're always welcome to talk to us, Mr. Postema.
Just no.
Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Are there communications from council? Councilmember Hayner.
Just briefly, I'd like to step backwards on CA 14 and suggest that if trash cans are going in the DDA district, the DDA should be paying for them. Thank you.
Further discussion? Pardon, further communication from council. Councilmember Ramlawi.
Well, thanks, and thanks to my colleagues for making it out here tonight. I know it's somewhat of an uncomfortable position to be in, but we are elected officials, and I felt it important to come tonight and do the work of the people, even in the face of the threat that we all face. I appreciate staff for being here tonight, answering the questions that we had. I hope the audience at home was satisfied, at least to a reasonable extent, that the city is working to address the issues that we're facing. But there are other agencies out there that have the enforcement, the systems in place, and the experts that do a lot of what our constituents want us to be doing. And the gaps that there are, I feel comfortable wearing the hat to help advocate for those issues to be addressed. As I said earlier, unfortunately, the hardest part is yet to come. And as we look at our challenges and our resources, we try to be very strategic as to where we apply those, so we have enough to go around to see this through. It is my unexpert opinion that this will continue throughout spring into summer and well into fall. So I think, again, we're going to have to find new normals every day and work through this and hopefully get through this together. I have heard members in the community who own small businesses, employees, employers, folks in the community that are distressed about the economic situation as well as the health situation. And we will be working on ways to help ease that as to the extent that we can. But those concerns are heard and hopefully will be addressed to the extent they can be.
Further communication from council. Do we have a closed session today? No. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Hayner, seconded by Councilmember Lum. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.